be honest, though, for the most part, it is not a free and open society for women in those states.
Well, it's not in Iran, it's not in Saudi Arabia, it certainly is in Indonesia and Malaysia, it certainly is in Bangladesh, it certainly is in Turkey.
Really, Reza? You're going with that, are you? Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh and Turkey. Free and open societies for women. Right, shall we take a look at that very dubious claim? I think we probably should, don't you? So, Indonesia. A woman recently received 100 lashes in public for merely being in the presence of a man she was not married to. That's the headline news outlets always go for because, you know, woman in peril pulls all the heartstrings. It sells. But to be fair, the man was also lashed, as is always the case. It's just that nobody cares about that, do they? And gays get similar treatment in that province. And women are forced to wear the jilbab.
Women exposing their hair is only one of the controversial crimes considered to be against local Sharia law. The local mayor has called on women passengers to sit side saddle on motorbikes, claiming that straddling is sexually suggestive, unfeminine, and un-Islamic.
If a woman straddles, the sensitive part of her body will push up against the man driving.
Filthy.
This is not allowed under Islam.
Fucking hell, Reza! You missed the mark there a bit, didn't you?
Can you explain to me the structure of the government of Indonesia?
I can't.
Okay. Do you know that Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world?
I've read that.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yes, and
right. But then, so if you're telling me you don't know anything about the way that the largest Muslim country in the world operates.
Oh, I do.
anything.
I
I
could
didn't
give you
say
statistics
anything.
about
Right, so-
Indonesia. I could tell you that in Indonesia, if you want to be a woman policeman or a woman military person, you have to undergo the two-finger test, where they tell if you're a virgin.
And it's well documented that FGM only started in Indonesia with the arrival of Islam in the 13th century, taking over nearly the entire country. It's only the Muslims in that country that practice FGM. To this day, the small percentage of remaining non-Muslims there, on secluded islands, are the only communities not practicing FGM, compared to the 97.5% of Muslim females who do FGM. And for those keeping track, Indonesia isn't in Central Africa, to further refute Reza's earlier claim. To elucidate, basically everything about this country contradicts what Reza Aslan has to say. The cheeky, sneaky, cheeky monkey. Cheeky. His next example was Malaysia, where Muslims can be arrested and fined, sentenced to lashes or jail just for being caught drinking alcohol, and where a man escaped jail for raping a 14-year-old girl by marrying his victim, who had no say in the matter, and where the government are currently throwing their support behind a bill that will include amputations and stonings as punishments in line with Sharia law. A free and open society. Oh, really, Reza? Yeah. Keep going, this is fun. What's your next example? Bangladesh. Bangladesh. Where, according to UNICEF, in the home, women's mobility is greatly limited and their decision-making power is often restricted. For instance, about 35% of Bangladeshi women say that their husbands alone make decisions regarding visits to family and friends. So that's over a third of the female population who basically aren't allowed to leave the house without their husbands say so. A free and open society for women, Reza says.
The majority of women here survive by earning a living from day to day. They are marginalised and vulnerable and not even aware of the steps politicians have taken to reduce their risk of exploitation.
And yet, voter turnout among Bangladeshi women is generally very high. The irony is that women still lack basic rights despite the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition being female.
Violence against women is another major impediment to women's development there, according to UNICEF. His last example, and I will confess the most progressive of the list, is Turkey. Well, as we all know, Erdogan is doing his best to turn Turkey into more and more of a theocratic dictatorship every time we look at the news. 4 sneezes. Do I get a prize? I don't know. I think I just had an orgasm. Now, I've been to Turkey, and I'm going to sneeze again. Look at the light bulb. Look at the light bulb. No. Oh dear. Okay. I've been to Turkey and have many friends and acquaintances from there. Nice people, the ones I know. And like I say, it's the most progressive nation Islam has to offer. But I can think of numerous examples from personal experience of how restrictive societal expectations are for Turks, especially women.
Hundreds of Turkish women took to the streets of Istanbul on Saturday, protesting against violence and animosity from men who demand they dress more conservatively. Protesters say there's been an increasing number of verbal and physical attacks against women recently because of their choice of clothing.
A free and open society for women, according to... Okay.
I mean, again, this is the problem, is that you're talking about a religion of 1.5 billion people, and certainly it becomes very easy to just simply paint them all with a single brush by saying, well, in Saudi Arabia they can't drive, and so therefore that's somehow representative of Islam. It's representative of Saudi Arabia.
No, Reza, that's an example of how extreme it can get in an Islamic theocracy. Nobody's saying that this is how it is in all Islamic countries. That's a straw man.
But again, this is the problem, is that you make these facile arguments like that women are somehow mistreated in the Muslim world, or like that women are somehow mistreated in the Muslim world.
Like that women are somehow mistreated in the Muslim world.
Saying that like it's an absurd suggestion, like some cuckoo, bigoted fantasy. To varying degree, women are mistreated in the Muslim world in ways unparalleled by Western society. Sexual slavery, not allowed to leave the house without a male guardian, not allowed to choose who they marry, forced to conceal their hands, ankles, hair and faces, and even eyes in some societies, regardless of the climate. And like I say, it's on a spectrum. Obviously, nobody's saying that every country has the very strictest dress codes and laws, such as in Iran or Saudi Arabia. It's a spectrum. And that spectrum ranges from the very conservative, by Western standards, to completely fucked up totalitarian dystopia and actual slavery in some nations. You know the movie Footloose with Kevin Bacon, where dancing to rock and roll is outlawed? When I was young, I used to think it was so silly and far-fetched for that to happen today. I mean, hey, it was the 80s. But those places really do exist in the Islamic world, right now. In fact, oftentimes, it's far worse. Just recently, a 15-year-old child had their head cut off because they were listening to modern music.
As opposed to these morons that think that they're tough, who go, we gotta fucking wipe them all out. We gotta fucking kill everybody. Fucking, if you're fucking into that religion, you just fucking kill, like that dumb shit. That what kills me is that CNN is starting to come around to and just be like, yeah, this is like a violent religion and all that.
It is a violent religion, Bill. Its founder was a warlord who beheaded people. You can't get more violent than that. The self-proclaimed Prophet Muhammad was not a wandering hippie like Jesus. Maybe in the earlier days, but later, Muhammad was basically a marauding, tribalistic, child-abusing, genocidal sand pirate who raped and pillaged his way across the Middle East with his followers. Now I agree that saying, we've got to wipe them all out, we've got to kill everybody, is dumb. But CNN aren't saying that, and I actually don't know anyone who says that. I mean, there's Hamas, the elected Muslim government of Palestine, who said that about the Jews and actually have the eradication of the Jews from the face of the planet written into their official charter. But I don't honestly know anyone who publicly or otherwise has called for the mass genocide of 1.5 billion Muslims. Because that shit be cray-cray, yo. See, I'm down with the street lingo. I've got my finger in the pulse. In the pulse? On the pulse. My finger was in the wrong place then. I do apologise. I'll just pull it out. Ooh, what was that? Relax. It's just noises. It's just noises.
What fucking kills me, especially with Christians, is the lack of honesty with your own fucking religion. Are you really gonna fucking sit there? Because if you're gonna indict these people because of their religion, then I could go with you as far as if you say all religion. Eventually, you're gonna have some wingnuts that it's gonna cause them to do some fucking horrific shit. You know what I mean?
No, Bill, I don't. All religions are bad, yes, but not equally so. When it comes to wingnuts, the Christians are pussycats compared to their Islamic counterparts. In fact, every time I hear mention of the KKK or the Westboro Baptist Church as examples of how Christianity is just as bad, I have to chuckle. The KKK are minuscule. A few thousand spread out across the whole of America, who've killed about 2 people. Literally, 2 in the past 50 years. The Westboro Baptist Church are just one family who hold up offensive signs saying God hates fags and such like. Whereas in Islam, you have ISIS, the Taliban, Boko Haram, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Muhajirun, Al-Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Hamas, Shia militias, and the list goes on. Numerous groups in multiple countries around the world doing a variety of horrendous shit. Throwing gays off rooftops, beheading people, throwing acid in schoolgirls' faces, taking sex slaves, you name it. It's just no competition. No competition.
You can't, as a fucking Christian, especially a Catholic. I'll just speak for my religion here. This fucking rap sheet. You know when they fucking, whenever you watch like an NYPD Blue or one of those do shows, and there's always that guy, he's got a rap sheet a mile long. Armed robbery, fucking assault and battery, you know, twisting parking meters off and spending the change down in an arcade. This kid spent more days in jail than he has out. That's my religion. That's my fucking religion.
Well, Bill, I will happily compare rap sheets between the 2 religions, neither of which I belong to, and neither of which I like particularly. Islam is a far more corrosive religion, though, especially as politically charged as it is. I mean, to name just one example, take death for apostasy. That's death for leaving the faith. It's a very real threat to any Muslim in any country, and some countries even have that instilled in law. No Christian or secular societies have that. That's just one example of how the rap sheets don't compare, and it would be enough on its own. But there are all the other issues I've mentioned. In fact, just to call them issues, it's not a strong enough word when referring to things like the rise of acid attacks and beheadings by Muslims across Europe. The word issues doesn't quite encapsulate the severity of the situation, does it?
That's my fucking religion. We had the Inquisition, we had the Crusades, we were in bed with the Nazis.
Wow, the Inquisition, the Crusades, the Nazis. Was that all in the same sentence? Oh, Bill. Bill. Oh, Bill. I like you, Bill. I love your comedy. Love it. And you seem like a great guy from what I've seen in interviews and so on. But this just has me face-palming so hard, it's going to be detrimental to my health. It's amazing how persuasive so many people find this talking point. The Inquisition, the Crusades, the Nazis. You'll find world leaders like Barack Obama when he was in power saying this kind of thing. And it's almost always in defense of Islam by Christians, often after a major Islamic terrorist attack. Oh, but the Inquisition, the Crusades, the Nazis. The Inquisition, the Crusades, the Nazis. Oh, for fuck's sake. A sort of way of saying, who are we to judge? Well, I'll tell you who you aren't. You aren't the Christian soldiers who fought in the Crusades, which, although horrendously brutal, were essentially a military reaction to the conquering of Christian nations by Islam over the previous centuries. The Christian religion has a very dark history. I'm an atheist, so I'm in full agreement with you on that. Clues in the title. Christianity sucks, but there's no comparison. And we are talking about the world today. Not 50 years ago, not 900 years ago, but today. And Islam was up to no good throughout history as well, you know. Hello? The Barbary slave trade? The Ottoman Empire? We're not talking about the past, but today. Because those two religions, as they are practiced today, are not even remotely comparable. The very fact that people need to dip into the ancient medieval history of Christianity to find the murder of non-believers and so forth speaks volumes. Many Islamic societies are still doing all that nasty stuff right now. That's the whole point. No Christian nations are. I mean, you may find the odd case of an angry Christian mob burning alive a woman who they think is a witch in some small African village somewhere. But it's fairly rare. That is true. See, I can do a better version of your argument than you can. That should tell you something. But Christians aren't throwing acid in little girls' faces for the crime of going to school or refusing to marry their uncle. Christians aren't stoning to death women for sex before or outside of marriage. Christian societies certainly aren't sentencing women to death for being raped. Christians aren't throwing gays off rooftops. Christians aren't literally crucifying children and displaying their rotting corpses in town squares as a warning to others who don't follow religious fasting laws to the letter. Christians aren't chopping off the hands of thieves. Christian societies aren't forcing their women to cover their entire bodies in uncomfortable black cloth bags in soaring temperatures. Christian societies aren't literally practicing slavery in the current year. Christians aren't brutally murdering people for drawing cartoons. All of these barbaric practices are occurring today under Islam in various parts of the world.
You know, Jewish people, when they were trying to track where the fuck their property went to, they ended up at the Vatican. And we were like, oh yeah, oh, is that yours? Oh, sorry, we were, we didn't know who was going to win. So, we kind of had to, fucking get in bed with both people. And sorry about that.
A Vatican siding with the Nazis? Yes, deplorable, I agree. Though today, in Muslim countries such as Turkey, Palestine, Bangladesh and Saudi Arabia, Mein Kampf is consistently still on the bestsellers list, due in part to the mutual hatred of Jews that large swaths of the Islamic community share with Hitler. #NotAll. So probably best not to go down that route. Christianity may have a lot to answer for, especially the Catholic Church. You'll get no argument from me on that, and I oppose it vehemently. But we are talking about Islam and the harmful effects that are a particular problem within that religion as it is practiced by many Islamic societies today. #NotAll.
Pedophilia, torture, just horrible shit.
Paedophilia you mentioned there. Well, that's awful, and Christian priests are caught doing it. But they feel shame and hide, and are rightfully vilified by their societies when it becomes known. To this day, the Catholic Church has utterly failed its victims of abuse, to the extent that it continues to shelter perpetrators by simply relocating them and hiding evidence and so forth, instead of turning them over to the authorities. That's horrendous, and I utterly condemn it, obviously. But now compare that with some Islamic nations, where paedophilia and child rape is not only practiced and fully legal, but literally celebrated and given an official seal of approval through marriage to exceptionally young children. The self-proclaimed Prophet Muhammad is declared by the vast majority of Muslims to be a perfect role model, and yet he himself married and sexually abused a 6-year-old girl, according to their own scriptures, and vaginally raped her at the age of 9. That's a significant difference, one that won't go away anytime soon. In fact, just recently a new law in Bangladesh effectively reduced the marriage age to 0. I've heard R. Kelly is trying to get a visa out there.
Yum, 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 good news. Torture, genocide, you name it. You name it. Go right down the whole fucking commandments. They've broken every fucking one of them.
I don't want to get into the 10 Commandments right now. We're supposed to be doing Islam, aren't we? But, as you bring it up...
Sally up, that brings Sally down. Last done start, gotta tell the ground.
The 10 Commandments are horrible. I mean, you mentioned torture and genocide. Well, they're not even in there. And Yahweh committed genocide numerous times in the Bible. The first 4 commandments have nothing to do with morality at all. They're just about worshipping Yahweh. Then you have, thou shalt not covet. That's thought policing. And in any case, there is absolutely nothing wrong with desiring better things. It's what drives society forward, the cornerstone of capitalism and the free market. Coveting is a perfectly healthy emotion that generates positive effects for society. How about honor thy mother and father? Well, what if your mother and father are complete and utter cunts? The word cunt there, sponsored by Burr. What if you're a rape baby? Should you honor both parents then? Thou shalt not steal? Well done. Bit bloody obvious. Thou shalt not kill? A similarly slow hand clap for that. Blatantly obvious. And as in the case of not stealing, existed as a general rule in societies for centuries, if not millennia, before the Bible was even concocted. It's also worth pointing out that Yahweh commands followers to kill far more times than not to kill. The punishment for working on the Sabbath, for example, is that you're to be put to death. That's a rule which Moses follows to the letter when he finds out someone's been picking up sticks on a Sunday. Quote,
It's a Sabbath day. Rules are rules. Kill that fucker.
Moses. I'm paraphrasing slightly. And actually, the Sabbath was a Saturday back then, wasn't it? Or something, I don't know. But irrelevant. You get the idea. Let's move on. We could talk about the 10 Commandments all day. And that could be an episode all of its own in some other universe where I could actually be bothered to do that. But the wider point is that Christians don't follow those Old Testament rules. Even, quote, fundamentalist Christians like the Westboro Baptist Church. And then Bill gets even further sidetracked, sort of pontificating about how priests might rationalize their beliefs and basically does a bit. So I'm going to miss that out. It's funny, but just not relevant. Only I'm allowed to go off on mad tangents. And as one of my favourite old viral memes goes, ain't nobody got time for that. I probably shouldn't do that voice, should I? Oh, the PC police will come and cart me away. No, it'll be fine. I'll edit that bit out.